I don't think the world is quite ready for it. It's been one of those things where they don't care what anybody thinks. It's the agenda and they're going to push it. Ready or not, here they come.
Welcome to This Week in Trucking, the podcast that tells you what you need to know about the trucking market for the week. My name is Caroline. When I went to the Mid-America Truck Show this spring, I was sitting at the Pro Talks, and I overheard someone behind me who sounded so familiar. Where do I know this guy from? And it was one of those moments where you just can't figure out how that voice. You've heard it before. And I turned around and I asked him, I'm sorry, do I know you? And he smiled and said, I don't know, do you? It took me a minute to realize I was sitting in front of Adam of DIY Semi, the first ever YouTube channel I watched when I started working at Bobtail to learn about the trucking industry and learn about the experiences of owner-operators and small fleet managers who are the customers Bobtail serves. I needed to know them because I was about to run marketing for this company. I'm excited to have him on the show today. Adam is a truck owner and entrepreneur on a mission, and I'm quoting here, to build a community that can unite and change the industry by making each of us too smart to fail. Thanks for being here, Adam.
Thanks for having me. You heard that strong Midwestern accent and said, I got to see who this guy is.
I'm from Michigan and lived abroad for a long time in Ecuador for my whole 20s. I had developed a more neutral accent there because when I would speak to people in English, when you're speaking to people whose first language isn't English, you have to use clearer, more direct language, right? You can't use like idioms and stuff like that. And just your pronunciation has to neutralize out so that people can understand you. But every time I would get on the phone with my mom, my coworkers would laugh at me because my Midwestern accent would come right back in. So talking to people like you brings me back to my roots. You're from Wisconsin, right? That's where you're based?
Yes, Central Wisconsin. Born and raised and will be forever.
Can you tell us how you got started in this industry?
It was back in the late 90s. I had my midlife crisis in my early 20s and had to make a decision. What in the heck am I going to do with my life? I tried going to college. High school wasn't for me, and I'll be darned if I was going to pay somebody to sit there in their classroom. I started looking for different things to do. This trucking thing might be a possibility. When you're a kid, you see trucks, get them to honk, but it never occurred to me that I could do that. I started asking around, and everybody's like, yeah, that's a pretty good living. You can do that. And I came from a farm background, so operating equipment was pretty natural to me. I took off to driving school and did pretty well. Got out, passed all my stuff the first time, and went trucking. Fell in love with it. I hit the road and never looked back. I didn't come home a lot. I never made great money in my life before, so that was exciting. And just got in my blood, and I've been stuck with it ever since. No regrets.
That sounds. I've been toying with the idea of at least getting my feet wet, going to a CDL school and trying to get some training around it. The closest I've had is a box truck that we rented to move, which I did not drive. My husband drove it. And it freaked me out because people are idiots around trucks. As soon as you get into the cab of anything bigger than SUV, you realize bad people are at driving around trucks, walking around trucks. What is up with that? What is your biggest pet peeve on the road?
My biggest pet peeve is when people pass you and they can't stay in their lane long enough to get past you and they swerve and almost hit you. Other than that, I'm a patient guy. I don't complain about traffic. I don't complain about cars. It's not going to make me mad what this guy just did. If someone talking to somebody on the phone and they start that, I'm like, I got to go. I'm not the guy to listen to all your traffic problems, but it's a microcosm of the world in general. People not paying attention, spans are short, and you put it behind the wheel, it just becomes noticeable. I think in day-to-day life, people are distracted by gadgets and trinkets, and they don't give it up when they're behind the wheel. So it's everything in life. It's not just bad driving and a lack of personal responsibility to think if everybody around you on the road is an idiot, you might be the idiot.
And that's what I realized.
It might be you, right?
That's what I realized in the cab of this truck. How many dumb things have I done around these trucks? I never noticed this kind of driving before, so I probably didn't notice it in myself.
We all do.
Because I'm sure
at some point or another, we just all need a little bit of forgiveness. We're all going to screw up. I make mistakes. Everybody else makes mistakes. It's just owning them and make it right and move on.
I'm glad I had that experience, and I'm still toying with the idea, and I should probably just do it. Any experience like that just always gives you so much more empathy for somebody else who's doing that job every single day. Thinking about someone driving a small 16-foot truck, it makes me think, how can I make someone who does this every day, how can I make their life a little bit easier? And it's probably not swerving in front of them or walking across the street in front of them. Those trucks take a lot to slow down. And so it's not like a regular car.
You're in the trucking industry. You talk to truckers every day in different aspects of the business part, but it'd make you a very well-rounded and valuable person to have that other skill of the other side of the industry.
Totally.
Different understanding of things. It's always a good resume builder.
Yeah, definitely. So what was the first truck that did you get a CDL and you drove semi-trucks right away? What was the first job that you had in trucking?
I was dry van, 48 states, nationwide, all over.
So you've done OTR.
Drove for a private fleet for a good bit. That was a great job. They went out of business. Let's back to the road. Getting a job
And then
in
when did you,
private fleet is a good deal.
would you ever do that again, or having your own business too much?
Got stuck with this. I've been building a trucking company for the last 4 years. I've had my own authority for 19 years. Sorry. And several years ago, just decided I've always thought about it's time to just do it. It was time to do it with rates being the way they were. If I was ever going to do it, now's the time. So I gave it a try, started bringing on people, buying equipment, and a lot of education. The biggest part has been relationship building. That's what's kept us in business and made us successful. The most important thing is relationship building, and that's with everybody. Customers, your equipment guy, your tire guy, your banker, your everything. It is all about relationships. That's probably the most valuable thing I've learned along the way, and surrounding myself with the right people. I've built some relationships with people that have taught me that. Give a lot of credit to them as well.
Who was the first, do you remember what the first broker or what the first load was that you called when you had your own authority?
I got set up with a guy pulling reefer freight from Wisconsin to California and back. That was almost 20 years ago. I think it was about $1.40 going out and probably $1.60 coming back. It's probably not much different now. If you look on the load board, we're close unless you have a connection. The equipment is pretty much doubled. Everything else is doubled, and rates are similar.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. That's a big difference about starting a trucking company today versus 19 years ago is the cost of doing business. And the rates haven't gone up much. They've gone up and down. But what other aspects of starting your own authority are different now than back then?
But you can get into it in different ways. It's very different than if you're building an authority and going to add drivers and stuff like that. You a whole different set of challenges of learning along the way. The basics would be back when I started, CSA wasn't a thing. A bad inspection hurt your score, but there was no CSA points. The penalties are much stiffer for non-compliance and not maintaining your equipment and things right now. The barrier to entry is very low. Just about anybody can start, whether they're ready or not. Unfortunately, a lot of people get in over their head, end up failing and losing a lot. The good old days are gone, right? The good old days of being a cowboy and an outlaw and whatever, they're over and they're not coming back. So that's the biggest thing is that you have to learn to be compliant. And it's not hard. It's just a big adjustment period. Over the years, I've gotten pretty good at it. We run a safe, compliant carrier. There's no logbook resets. Equipment has changed a lot. The trucks are phenomenal. The technology is exceptional. In some ways, it's a glorified motorhome. This job is a lot easier than it used to be. You have powerful trucks with great driver amenities, cell phone technologies, GPS technologies. I didn't get my first cell phone until I had probably already been driving like 4 years. And everybody, how did you do your job before that? You had a payphone. You stopped a couple times a day to use the payphone. You had maps, an overhead compartment full of maps. You pull your maps out and look, see where you're going. You had to learn to get around. I think that's probably one of the biggest things missing nowadays is people are too reliant on technology for their own good. Nobody carries an atlas anymore. I carry one. I use it all the time. Call people for directions and just blindly follow the GPS. It gets a lot of people in trouble. Automated transmissions have made a lot of complacency. In a lot of ways, they've been good. Increased fuel mileage and less driver abuse from having to learn to shift. But I've experienced both, and it does make you a little bit complacent, if we're being honest. That coming in and out of a parking lot at 30 miles an hour, you're not controlling that truck the same way you are in a manual transmission. It's brought a lot of people into the industry that probably could not have done it had they had to have been in a manual transmission. Technology changed this industry massively, and it's not done yet. Another 10 years to do.
Yeah, and sometimes people think of the good old days, and then I think, were the good old days really all that good? There were challenges back then too. You're hitting on changes to technology or business to make it more efficient, let's say. But maybe efficient is not always on a net better or safer. So you're talking about the difference between automated versus manual transmissions. Do you think then that manual transmissions on the whole are probably safer just because the people who drive them are more in tune with the vehicle and are more knowledgeable?
A lot of the people in the industry a long time would say yes. I'm on the fence. If a driver chooses to be safe, he's going to be safe. If he chooses to be reckless, he's going to be careless no matter what he's driving. I think manual transmission kind of forces you to pay attention. It'll teach you to drive that truck, whereas you have forgiveness the other way. Ultimately, it's up to the driver. I own both. My personal truck is a manual. I prefer it that way. I just like something to do. But I slide into that automatic transmission real easy. You get used to it real quick. It is a nice luxury item.
I have a brother-in-law who thinks the same way about personal vehicles. Automatic transmissions, you just don't have to think about the car anymore. And so people don't think about the car anymore, and they're not as good at driving.
Yeah, some things I find with automated transmissions is you'll get caught not paying attention. You'll come into a turn parking lot too fast. You tend to do things faster, which in trucking is not good, because besides what you're doing with the truck, you got to remember about all that cargo in your trailer, and you don't want to be slamming on the brakes and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely upsides and downsides.
Do you think autonomous trucking technology might fix some problems or make it worse?
It's going to be both. It's not going to come without challenges. It's so new. There's a lot of different camps. Oh, it's never going to happen. To an extent, it's already happening. It's just the level to which it's going to happen and how quickly they choose for it to happen. I'm not in favor of autonomous trucks. I think it's a bad idea. Where are you going to place the liability? Who's going to pay when something happens, right? And it's jobs. Trucking is the number one paying job for high school educated men in this country. And there's a lot of them. Okay, then what happens to those people? It's a big issue. I don't think the world is ready for it. It's one of those things where they don't really care what anybody thinks. It's the agenda, and they're going to push it. Ready or not, here they come, right? Maybe in fair weather states, it's already being done. They put out some kind of announcement. Somebody hit a turn, 50,000 lane turns with an autonomous truck. Congratulations on that. The economy's not ready for it. You put all those people on the unemployment line, and then what? The infrastructure is certainly not ready for it. That's the biggest thing. There's been no changes significantly to the infrastructure to accommodate for this. And then if you make those autonomous trucks electric, we don't have the infrastructure for that. They need to pump the brakes on it a little bit and slow down and think these things through. It's going to be a whole bunch of unintended consequences. We haven't thought of the problems. Most of them it's going to create. Sure, we all know about safety and blah, 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 unemployment, but there's some problems here we haven't even thought about yet. And we won't until they happen.
I think it's similar to that there's a big drop of technology in AI, but that the incorporation of that technology into trucking, I think it's going to happen slower than people are imagining. I also think about that in movies come out, these dystopian futures where everything is AI, and I don't think it goes from 0 to 100 in 1 year.
Devices, no, it doesn't. But if you come up with some kind of crisis situation, then what happens?
But I think you're right. It's already happening. Autonomous technology is already integrated. I have autonomous technology in my personal vehicle, right? I've got it. I do cruise control on the expressway, and it's helping me keep a good distance between me and the car in front of me autonomously. I've got some lane correcting technology, and that's in a relatively inexpensive car, right? And that's that kind of stuff with mirrors now. I know have some autonomous technology with in trucks. So those kind of things, I do think that there are some fully autonomous vehicles, but I don't think it's going to go from 0% autonomy to 100% autonomy. I think there's going to be a progression
between.
Yeah.
And there is places for it. If you go to a Dollar General distribution center, they can have all the spotter trucks be autonomous. There's probably a place for an electric. Okay, they're never leaving the property. They can have their own charging stations. That's logical. But to be out hauling irregular route freight throughout the United States, that's a bigger leap.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about the content that you've been putting out. Other YouTubers I find in trucking focus a lot on either the freight market or their lifestyle of what it's like to be a trucker out on the road. What made you focus on maintenance and parts? What is it? Is it just a fascination with the technology of trucks, or is it something else that made you want to create content about that?
The reason I don't do lifestyle is it's just not something I'm into. There's plenty of people to do that. The industry needs something more valuable, which is
more
that can
substantive.
save money, right? Compliance. So we do a lot of videos about the freight market and stuff. I have different people on about that and talk a lot about that, direct shipper freight, all those kinds of things. When I started the channel, it was a lot more maintenance type stuff and repairs because shop rates there's shops $300 an hour. Now this maintenance thing will eat you alive, put you out of business. Do I think everybody needs to do their own maintenance? No, There's a lot of little things in between. Even if you don't know, you don't come from any kind of mechanical background, hey, there's little things you can do for confidence builders. Start small. Start by changing an airbag or something. These things are simple. That wasn't so bad. Maybe I can do other things. You don't have to call a service truck or put this thing in the dealer every time something little comes up. If you do, it's gonna eat you alive. And having come from that kind of background, tinkering, grew up messing with farm equipment and stuff. And do I know everything? Absolutely not. These trucks are sophisticated. Some things never change. Years ago, I was at a TA truck stop. This guy brought his truck in to get a headlight changed. I'm like, that's not really that bad. The mechanic only had one hand cut off at the wrist, just a stump there. And I'm like, man, I'd feel bad. I'd feel probably not very smart if I couldn't change a headlight. This dude with one hand gets it done in 5 minutes. I'm going to learn how to do these things. And I think other people need to learn them. If you're going to own your truck, be about it. Learn about your equipment, how things work. Even if you don't want to fix it, really big fan of learning how things work, because you're going to need to know to keep nothing else to keep somebody from ripping you off, right? Like people all the time, oh, I went in for the car. They try to get females all the time, right? Oh, you need a whole new engine. No, you just need an oil change. Places will do that. Be your own best advocate. I like to educate on everything. I would do a lot of videos about different compliance issues and a lot about freight. I started doing this because I saw a need and I felt like I could. It's been great. Met a lot of interesting people along the way, built some really good relationships, and this has been a great journey on YouTube doing that.
Yeah, it's fun. I started doing videos for Bobtail because there was a gap in knowledge. I focused on paperwork, compliance, and getting started. Every article I read about it seemed like AI written, and it didn't really make sense to me. And the words that it was using, the vocabulary that it was using, I didn't understand. I think of myself as a pretty smart, and I couldn't figure it out. So I had to research, what do you need to get started? What makes the most sense? And in what order? No one tells you the order it's supposed to go in. I had to switch the order a million times because people kept having to correct me. No, you're supposed to get this first and then this and move it around. Before you even think about buying a truck, you actually need to be thinking about your insurance, because that's going to be just as expensive, if not more.
Sounds like you've seen my video on starting your authority.
So talk to me about that. If you were starting a trucking company in 2024, would you do it? Starting your own authority, not buying a bunch of trucks, but would you start your own authority in 2024? How would you go about it?
If my goal was to build a trucking company, I would say do that. If I was just going to buy one truck, get my own authority, and stick to the load board, I probably wouldn't. There's so many things working against you. A lot of brokers won't use a new authority. The fraud is just rampant. It is going to make it so hard for you to do business as a new authority. If you don't have connections ahead of time and have a deal worked out with somebody, just maybe rethink that. You could get buried before you even get started. And then you get started with payments and debt and can't book loads because nobody will give you one. That's the environment we're in right now. If you got some freight worked out and can try to stay off the load boards, that's different. Your intent is different. How do you do it? Stock up on information first. Talk to somebody about insurance. Definitely before you buy your equipment, go talk to somebody about insurance, because you could get blindsided by an insurance rate that would just blow your mind. I know one guy, he used to work for me. He was going to get his own authority. They wanted $71,000 his first year for one truck and trailer. He had a couple dings on his record. They're doing that to discourage him. They don't want to insure him. May come in as good as 12 to 14,000, which is manageable. But you got to know that number ahead of time, because that could be the deciding factor if it's even going to work for you. Now's a good time to buy equipment. Trucks are cheap. I just picked up another one a couple days ago. 2 years ago, the same truck I just bought would have been $110,000. I just bought one for $39,000, that same truck. Trailers are reasonable. There's all these new technologies now that brokers are using to vet carriers that are making it very difficult. So how you set things up in the beginning, you are stuck with for years. So make sure you set your company up at the address you want it at. No other business names would be really helpful. If you're thinking about starting a brokerage, totally separate from your trucking company. You get that thing at a different address, different phone number, different email. If you can put it in a different name, that would be helpful. Great detail on how you set it up, because you're going to be stuck with that. There's the information you have now will follow you for years.
Yeah, and have a real address.
Yeah, no VOIP.
PO box.
Yeah, no PO box, no VOIP. Don't be logging in from Moldova. Be legit. Go out of your way to prove you're legit. It'll help your chances. The level of scamming in this industry is phenomenal. Even as a legitimate carrier, it can be hard. I'll go out of my way. Here's my registrations, right? Here's whatever, picture of the truck. And sometimes it just isn't even enough.
Really? Have you ever gotten denied a load because of anything and that's how you learned about this, or did you just hear about it from other people?
No, we've been denied for various
Yeah.
reasons. Once you get your FMCSA information set up, don't change your phone number, don't change your email, don't change your mailing address. All these things are red flags. Some brokerages, if they see that you changed your phone number or changed your email address on file with your MCS 150, they'll start you all over as a brand new company and won't give you a load for 90 days or 9 months. They
I
see
did
it as
not know
fraud.
that.
They see it as fraud. Yeah, you don't want to be making any changes right now to anything.
Do you recommend people get their own domain for email and a website? Do you think that helps?
I think it does. I prefer it. If I'm emailing a broker and they're using Gmail, we ain't booking a load. If they're using iCloud, better have your company domain.
You look out for the same things when booking with a broker.
Yeah, with trucking companies, it's different. I don't expect every one truck driver to have his own website or whatever. But with Gmail, it costs peanuts, a couple of bucks a month to have your own domain. And then something I'm working on right now is to set all my drivers up with an email at my domain. So when they email a broker, it looks more legit. It's crazy right now.
I even recommend to people if they're setting up a one truck operation, I say get a website, get your own domain. It doesn't cost much at all.
No.
It depends on the domain that you get, but you can get domains for $10 a year. Gmail costs you, I don't know, $7 a month per user for a domain, info at whatever domain you chose.com. And it just makes you look so much more professional. You can one-page website on Squarespace, $15 a month maybe.
Yeah.
It's really pennies.
At minimum, like a Facebook page, company face. A lot of people do that. It's free, easy, and it looks good too.
And you can get free websites too. You can do WordPress. You might not have your domain, but at least it has your trucking company's information. I say this all the time. I'm a digital marketer. I make websites and do digital marketing for a living. It's not that hard.
Promote your business.
It's not as complicated as driving a truck. If you can drive 40,000 pounds down the road at 60 miles an hour, you could figure out how to create a one-page website. Speaking of trucks, you've been sharing about your rebuild project of a 1999 Freightliner Classic. Is this your first project, or have you done them in the past, and why do you do them?
It's the first one. It's not going so well. I have a hard time. Every time I've walked out there, I'm going to pull the thing in the shop, and then the phone starts ringing, and something blows up, and I got to walk away, or I have another truck breakdown. This is going to take a while. I like to do it. It's a little bit of content, and it gives me the opportunity to show how to fix things. That's an old truck. A lot of things on that thing need to be fixed or repaired, and then that gives the people opportunity to see and learn from that, and it takes my mind off other things. Will that truck see the road for hauling freight? Probably. I won't sell it. It'll just be my truck. Like some people have a Harley or a Corvette, and that'll be my thing. It doesn't cost much. Nice to look at. Fun.
I always admire people who have a hobby that's pretty much the same thing that they do in their day-to-day life or a part of it. I'll be asking my mom what she's doing, and she's an expert in business and organizational communication, and she's still reading books about that. Like she's in her free time. She'll just be pulling out an article or sharing stuff with me. And like, you spend already your full-time job thinking about that and working on that, and on top of that, you still want it. You just can't get enough. And I admire people who found that.
My hobby is antique farm tractors.
Okay.
Mess with that.
Does that help you in the trucking space? No.
It's going to become a lost art because the equipment and parts don't exist anymore. Nothing runs on a magneto anymore, and nobody knows how to rebuild a carburetor here in probably the next 20 years. Maybe someday it might, but it's just fun. You might have a lot of fun in your Maserati and a Corvette, but when I get on my Minneapolis Moline ZTS, I'm grinning just as big, probably bigger, at 4 miles an hour down the road or across the field. It's fun for me.
Awesome.
Reminds me of my childhood.
The Amish are passing you.
Pretty much. On foot.
Yeah. That's awesome. We met at the Mid-America Truck Show. I've been a fan and a subscriber of DIY Semi. What did you think of the Mid-America Truck Show? How does it compare to other events you've been to?
I loved it. I met you this year, my second year. The first year, it was hard to take it all in. It took 2.5 days to cover everything. I learned some things and I had a strategy for this year. So you got trucks, trailers, equipment, and you got 2 seminar areas in the South Wing, I think it is, where they have the stage. Those seminars don't quite seem to be as serious as the ones in the auditoriums. So this year I wanted to go sit in the auditoriums and listen to some of the big boys talk. I never made it there. We met friends and we hung out a lot this year. It was a great time. I needed it. Everybody else needed it. And we just had a lot of fun. We'll probably do it again next year. But the truck show, it's full of opportunity. You might find if you're looking for that one thing or meet that one person that can help you take your business to the next level, you're probably going to meet them there or find it there. Everything you need to see or learn. I recommend everybody go at least once and have a good time. Check everything out. A friend of mine was speaking next year. We'll try to get some more seminars in. Probably see you there.
I agree. The content in those talks was rich. I actually thought that there was quite a bit of really useful content in the space in the showroom where we met. There were a couple of initiatives and people doing different things that blew my mind. The Truckers Against Human Trafficking did a presentation. It was the last presentation of the day, and most people had already gone. There weren't a lot of people around there. But man, that is a powerful organization doing some really cool work. So shout out to them. I'll link their information in the description. Super cool work. I met a couple of people, Victor Newton from YouTube and Gay from Overdims, which is a really cool platform that she's created to get all your permits for hauling oversized freight. I thought that was a really innovative thing. One thing I was surprised about, first of all, I was surprised that there was I don't know if you went to the seminar on autonomous trucking. It was heated and uncomfortable, but I give the guy credit for going up there and speaking because, man, that's not a friendly crowd. And he took it. I give those people a lot of credit for showing up. You might disagree with everything they say, but they're there. And they've got some kind of motivation, some kind of power, and they don't necessarily have to listen to or answer your questions. They could avoid that space altogether. They don't. They actually jump into the fire. One thing that I was surprised at, though, was the lack of any electric technology. I think I saw there was one stand with a electric reefer trailer. So that one was interesting. But I was surprised that there's no talk about electric trucks. Now, I know they're not real popular with folks, but neither is autonomous trucking. And there were people talking about autonomous trucking. So that was interesting to me. Do you think that's a reflection of the fact that most people there are OTR and really there's not electric technology for that now?
The main target for electric truck manufacturers is bigger fleets or government right at the moment. I think their price point would make it unattainable to the average person at this point. I went to a clean energy something or other. It was like the truck show, but on a smaller scale. It was all green energy and electrics, garbage trucks, dump trucks, street sweepers, cars, motorcycles. It was interesting. It's just not there yet.
For OTR, it just doesn't really exist.
You're in Wisconsin. It's cold in winter. You're getting less battery life. It's just not practical yet. It's got more innovation to do. They'll get there. I'm not for or against them. There's a place for everything. They just got to find that right application. Not just like the hours of service for trucking. They do not fit it, nor does all this different kinds of equipment and energy. Some people, oil is the only way to go. Solar is the only way to. We should be doing all of them. Probably solve a lot of our problems. Just like with trucking, there's hydrogen, electric, hybrid, diesel. There's a place for all of it. We just got to find that place. For spotting, they're going to have charging stations. Those electric trucks would never leave. It's perfect for electric vehicles. Some municipalities where garbage trucks don't go more than 5 to 10 miles from their home terminal, there's a good place for it. But it's not practical.
I think school buses is a huge one. Just of particulate matter that you get inside those buses, all the windows rolled down and kids are breathing that in. That's a perfect application for electric too.
And then there's a lot of sides of it we haven't even explored yet. You got 75 human lives on board, and if somebody hits that school bus, those batteries are going to go up in flames. Do we want that application in a place where we're hauling the most expensive cargo in the world, right? 72 kids. So there's a whole lot of things we haven't talked about yet. And then who was that liability on? It's a very complicated issues.
No, that's a good point. Safety issue of batteries. I was wondering, we did an interview with somebody from CARB, who is the entity in California of regulating electric trucks. I heard all of this talk about, I would ask people about electric because I really wanted to have that conversation there because that's something I'm interested in. And people were saying, oh, my truck's going to be illegal in California in 10 years. And I looked at the regulation and it's just not true. It literally is not on the books at all. It might be that they're just projecting that into the future, what they think is going to be the regulation in the future. But
trucks
the
that
current
can't go in
regulation,
California.
because of they do have emissions regulations, but it's not that all internal combustion engines are going to be outlawed in California in the next 5 years.
I
It's
thought by
just not the
2035,
case.
any car sold in California had to be electric
I
trucks.
haven't looked into personal vehicles. There are emissions regulations
Right.
for heavy trucks, right? There is all over, just Californians is much more strict. So there are vehicles that can't go into California due to emissions regulations. The electric vehicle regulation is phasing in electric vehicles over time for fleets over 50 trucks. If you own one truck, unless it's a dray truck, they're not expecting you to go electric anytime soon. I think you're right. People think it's black and white. Oh, everything is going to go electric. No, everything can't go electric. And
How are
anyone
we
who
gonna power it?
suggests that,
Where's the electricity going to come from?
especially you can't do it overnight. Like you can't even do it in a year. You've got to build infrastructure, think about things. You got to think through what are the implications of how much electricity cost is going to go up. So you have to think through all of these things. And I think that makes sense. What is the recipe of all these technologies coming together? How much of one, how much of the other? How does it change over time? You just can't think of it in black and white terms.
No. And they can all complement each other and they all have their place.
Our goal in this show is to expose the reality of the trucking industry so people can enter and succeed with the right information. We've gotten a lot of wisdom from you today. Who do you recommend we talk to next?
Oh boy. Okay. The one guy I want you to talk to is Paul. He has a company called FreightConnect.com, FR8Connect.com.
Yeah,
Paul
okay,
is
I've
a
heard
dear
of
friend of mine, and he's been a mentor. We talk all the time. Paul cold called me 5 years ago. He helps small carriers build relationships and get direct shipper freight without a broker. I told him, no, I'm not ready. A year later, I blindsided him with, yeah, let's do this. In addition to that, you and I are going to do some YouTube shows together and talk to people about getting direct shipper freight, because some people are dead set against this. Believe me, you need it. Like it will help you survive. It's the best thing you can do for your business. And after a certain period of time, you'll see. You'll wish you had done it sooner. Most think it's not possible, but Paul can help get you there. So I'd suggest you talk to him. And then a couple fellas I met recently, Nate and Jared from eCarrierCheck. We'll set you up to talk to them. They are building a platform to be a competitor for, it's going to do a whole bunch of different things, and I use it. It's great. It's to vet brokers, to vet carriers. It'll be a competitor to Carrier 411. They help you. There's some resources within there to help complement what Paul does to find direct shippers, and they do a lot of sales trainings. One thing with going back to Paul is if you can't sell your business, that's what a broker is. He's your salesman, whether you like it or not. He's just your outside salesman. Learn to sell your own freight, sell yourself. You can do that yourself. And if you can't do it yourself, then you need to hire somebody that can. That's where Paul can come in as an outside salesperson and help you on a limited basis to whatever you need to get your own freight. Sales is one thing most people lack, myself included. And I've really worked on that over the years. I've taken sales training, and I couldn't imagine having not done it. It's the missing key piece in most people's trucking company, and it is one of the most important things.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is the one piece.
That gives me so many ideas.
It's the piece 95% of trucking companies are missing is sales.
Do you think when you're learning about sales, is it general knowledge for any salesperson, or are there specific things a salesperson in the freight industry should know?
You need to know about trucking. You need to know about what you're selling. There's a reason salespeople are the most highly paid people in this world, because it's a tough job. It might sound easy. Oh, you just pick up the phone and get shippers. No, it's not that easy. You can work on one for a year before you get freight.
Pay me enough to do cold calling.
I say everybody needs to do it, but I'm not saying it's easy. It's tough. But if you don't try, you'll never. If you don't try, your chances are zero. You will never get it. And if you can't do it, hire somebody who can. Awesome.
Adam, thank you so much. I used to say that these episodes would take 30 minutes or less, and it's just not true. It's just not realistic. Not with someone like Adam from DIY. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone listening gets home, drives safe, and let us know what questions you have in the comments, and we'll get them answered in the next episode.
Take care, everybody.